Today, we're going to talk about 2026 because it looks like it's going to be a truly revolutionary year for technology. We're not just talking about one big breakthrough. We're talking about 5 massive trends all hitting at the same time, and we're going to break down exactly what that means for all of us.
So, forget about the usual yearly upgrades. This is a genuine turning point. We're seeing technologies that have felt like they were just around the corner for years. I'm talking thinking AI, humanoid robots, finally leaving the research labs and stepping into the real world.
So let's dive into the 5 trends that are really set to reshape, well, pretty much everything. And the big question we have to ask ourselves is, are we actually ready for what's coming? Let's start with the one that's kind of powering all the others. First up, we've got agentic AI. Now this is a huge leap beyond the AI that we're all used to. We're shifting from an AI that just follows our commands to an AI that can actually think, plan, and act all on its own.
So what really is agentic AI? Well, forget about your simple chatbots. These are fully autonomous systems. You can give them a really complex goal, and they'll figure out the entire roadmap to get there. The planning, the decisions, the execution, all without you needing to hold its hand every step of the way.
Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine you tell an AI agent, hey, build me an app for restaurant reservations. It wouldn't just spit out some ideas. No, it would actually analyze what's needed, write and test the code, handle the bug fixes, and even work on making the user experience better. It's basically an autonomous project manager from start to finish.
And listen, this isn't just a theory. Look at these numbers from a real-world test. An agentic AI called Devin was tasked with solving actual software problems on GitHub, and it succeeded almost 14% of the time, completely by itself. Compare that to the super powerful GPT-4, which could only solve less than 2%. That's not just a little bit better, that's a whole different league of capability.
Of course, anytime you have this much power and autonomy, you're going to have a whole new set of pretty serious risks. So what are the big roadblocks we need to figure out before these things are everywhere?
It really boils down to 3 main hurdles. First, there's the control problem. How do we make sure these autonomous systems actually do what we want them to do and stay aligned with our goals? Second, security. There's this sneaky trick called prompt injection that can basically hijack an AI's mission, turning your helpful assistant into a potential threat. And finally, you've got cost. The computing power needed to run these agents is just astronomical, which makes them super expensive to use at a large scale.
Okay, so what happens when you take that incredibly powerful AI and give it a physical body? Well, that brings us to our second huge trend, physical AI. We're talking about 2026 being the year that AI literally walks out of the digital world as humanoid robots start making their way into our lives.
And the race is already on. You've got the big players like Tesla's Optimus, which is being designed for mass production with a pretty jaw-dropping target price of under $20,000. Then you have Figure 02, which you could call the brainy one, with OpenAI's tech built in, already being tested in factories. And you can't ignore Unitree's G1. It's the most affordable at just $16,000. And yeah, it can do kung fu.
So where are we actually going to see these robots? Well, they're already in trials in places like Amazon warehouses, helping with logistics. There are robots like Grace being designed specifically for elderly care to help monitor health. And then you have companies like 1X building their Neo robot with the goal of having it help us right inside our own homes.
But, let's keep our feet on the ground here. There are still some major challenges. Battery life is a huge one. Most of these robots can only run for a couple of hours at a time. They also still struggle with the really fine, precise movements we take for granted. And even though prices are coming down, they're still way too expensive for the average person. So we're right on the edge, but we're not quite over it yet.
All right, trend number 3 takes us right back to the device that's probably in your pocket right now, or I guess the device that will soon unfold from your pocket. 2026 is shaping up to be the year that the foldable phone market finally hits the mainstream, and it's largely because of one particular company.
So this whole journey really kicked off with Samsung back in 2019. But in 2026, things are about to get wild. We're seeing crazy new ideas like Huawei's Trifold phone, which can go from a regular phone to a full-on tablet. But let's be honest, the main event that everyone is holding their breath for is the rumored launch of the iPhone Fold this September.
And here is why Apple getting into the game could be such a massive disruption. It's not just their design and their ecosystem, they might actually compete on price. The rumored price for the iPhone Fold is actually lower than what's expected for its biggest rival from Samsung. If that turns out to be true, it could completely upend the entire premium phone market.
But let's be real, foldables still aren't perfect. Hinge durability is a big question mark. They're typically rated for around 200,000 folds, which sounds like a lot, but for a heavy user, that could be just a few years. They're also still really pricey, and they are definitely heavier and thicker than the standard phones we're used to.
Now for our fourth trend, which is really two massive changes in the world of finance that are happening at the same time. By 2026, the way we pay for things and even the very idea of what we can own are about to change in a fundamental way.
Let me just ask you a question. What if paying for something just disappeared? It just happened in the background. And what if you could buy or sell a tiny piece of a skyscraper just as easily as you can buy a share of stock? That is the future that we're talking about here.
So, on one side, you have embedded finance. Just think about taking an Uber or buying something you see on TikTok. The payment is so seamless you barely even notice it. And then on the other side, you have something called real-world assets, or RWA. This is where you take physical things, like a piece of art or a building, and turn them into digital tokens, which lets people invest in just a small fraction of them.
And the potential scale here is just mind-blowing. Boston Consulting Group is projecting that the market for these tokenized assets will hit $16 trillion by the end of 2026. Let me be clear, that's trillion with a T. This isn't some tiny niche market. This is a complete reshaping of global finance.
But of course, this brave new financial world has some serious risks. Making payments seamless also creates more opportunities for hackers. The regulations around the world are a total mess. If spending becomes too easy, it can lead to overspending. And for those RWAs, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to find a buyer right when you want to sell your token.
So, let's pull all of this together. We've got AI that thinks, robots that walk, phones that fold, and finance that's becoming invisible and divisible. What does all of this stuff converging in 2026 actually mean for you?
Well, it really depends on what you do. If you're a developer, learning how to build with and manage AI agents just became a must-have skill. If you're running a business, you probably should have started building an embedded finance strategy yesterday. For investors, RWAs are a massive, though definitely risky, opportunity. And for all of us, just as consumers, it's probably time to get ready for a world with foldable screens and robots in our homes.
Look, these 5 trends aren't some far-off science fiction anymore. They are the reality that is unfolding for 2026. The change is already happening. So the question really isn't if this future is going to arrive. It's how are you going to prepare for it? Thanks for watching.